Blog Talk Radio.
Are you curious of what may go bump in the night? Or shadowy secrets that may never come to light? Then tune in to Disclosure Now. I'm your host, the Pied Piper, co-hosted by Texas Rebel. Tune in and let's get real. Brought to you by the Enlightenment Evolution Network.
The opinions, commentary, and views that are expressed here at Disclosure Now, or the guest of the show, are not necessarily reflections of the view of the Enlightenment Evolution Network. All right, well, thank you for tuning in to Disclosure Now. I am your host, the Pied Piper.
I'm Texas Rebel.
And tonight we have an awesome show and a special guest. Michael Horn will be with us to educate us and to share information on the Billy Meier Contactee story. He also has a new documentary called And Did They Listen? So some of you may be familiar with some of the Meier footage or some of the pictures, or of the contactee itself. I believe that most of you haven't. He was a contactee, and there's a strange thing happening in the UFO field, and it's the fact that UFO sightings are mainstream kind of now. And, you know, in a sense, but when it comes to the contactee encounters, they're still scoffed at. They tend to be dismissed or discredited in some way. I find it troubling that in my opinion, in a never-ending, expanding universe, you know, we tend to think that, you know, we're just closed-minded. We assume we know what is possible, what is not. We know what is real and what is not. But in reality, it's different. It's in the eye of the beholder or experiencer. I say, you know, we are a species that's still in its infancy in a lot of ways. And not too long ago, if you believe current science, we, you know, descended out of the trees and onto the plains. And I just hope we can expand our minds as we experience these growing pains as our civilization chugs along and progresses here. So please suspend disbelief, all of you skeptics and debunkers that may be listening with us first. And let's hear Billy's story before making a conclusion. So, Michael, thank you for coming on Disclosure Now, and thank you for sharing this information with us tonight. Can you please tell us a little about you and how you became involved in the Meier case?
Yes, William, thank you, and hi, Reb, and listeners. I first encountered the material in the Billy Meier case in 1979 when I walked into a bookstore in Los Angeles that had what are called coffee table photo books. And it was primarily these amazing photos of UFOs, clear, stunningly clear, detailed, certainly not the lights in the sky that we're most familiar with. And in addition to those stunning photos, which were taken by Billy Meier, Billy Edward Albert Meier, there was other information in there about some of the evidence and analysis and testing and witnesses and what have you, investigators who were involved in the case. The photo book was so compelling that my first, you know, gut level instinct was, well, this is authentic. This is the real deal. And of course, I've never changed my opinion on that. But now, 35 plus years later, I don't have to simply go on a gut level response. Which, when it comes to matters of fact and matters of science and matters of evidence and proof and what have you, gut level responses have to be supported by rational, intelligent, diligent, due diligent, hard work, analysis, and the process of establishing whether something is or is not authentic. And that is something I've spent, you know, on an ongoing basis and intermittently as well, different times, different levels of focus on the Meier case. I've looked at other UFO cases. I've certainly been made aware of virtually just about probably all of their claims and evidence. I've seen nothing that comes even remotely close to Meier's physical evidence, the photos, films, video, metal samples, sound recordings, seven-fingered handprints, all that, you name it, the physical evidence. And of course, there's nothing even in the same realm as far as the prophetic information, that is prophetically accurate scientific and world event-related information. And then all of it leads to the core of the case, which is a spiritual teaching, which is a non-religious, belief-free teaching, meaning people are free to study it and not accept it as a matter of compulsion or belief or anything. So for 25, 35 years now, actually, as I say, I've been involved in investigating, researching. I've gone to Switzerland 14 times, interviewed Meier each of those times, sometimes on film. I've got about 4 DVDs on that out now, including the new film you mentioned. And within the next couple of weeks, we'll have another film that will be solely Meier answering about 30 questions pertaining to applying this teaching in everyday life. And I guess what I could say other than that is that I have also taken on every skeptical challenge from every professional skeptic and non-professional skeptic. I've done whatever I could to encounter them, and now we can no longer get them to even come forward since we have new photo analyses that are ironclad as usual. The skeptics have simply evaporated, but certainly anybody who's out there and skeptical wants a challenge. That's fine. So that's kind of where I'm at right now with it.
Okay. Well, that's part of the reason why I wanted you on my show. I know that you have definitely have done your due diligence on the Meier encounter and his subsequent work thereafter. I have a few questions. This is, first of all, so that everybody understands at home, what are the Pleiarans? They're not Greys. They're not reptilians. Can you explain this to us, please?
Yes. In a nutshell, of course, there'll be more to it than this, but the Pleiaran are a fully human, space-traveling race, very advanced, whose ancestors, going back literally millions of years, were already space travelers. And some of their ancestors were very large, gigantic people, highly developed technologically, had great spiritual abilities as well. And in many cases, they misused all of that. They exploited different peoples and planets. They were destructive and warlike at times. They created a big mess in many places. This is all, of course, according to the information in the case. Now, you're going to find, just as a little note here, there are things that may have occurred in the far distant past or have not yet occurred in the as yet unarrived future that we can't in this moment substantiate, prove, or disprove. So in giving you this type of description and history and all that about the Pleiaran, we have to say according to the information in the case. The Pleiaran and other human beings, space-traveling races, members of them that Meier has met, are involved in a federation. It is none of the imaginary New Age stuff, the Galactic Federation of Light and all the rest of the stuff. And I'll be able to, talk more about my cynical responses later to all that. But one should know in this case that there is freely available hundreds and hundreds of pages of information, such as I have gone through, such as I've helped to bring together and collate and what have you, that people can, certainly if they wish to, study themselves and ultimately draw their own conclusions as to the validity of the case and what it may mean to them. Excellent.
Now, for some people that hasn't delved into the case as much as say you or I have, I knew of the footage, I knew of the pictures, I didn't know of the message, I guess, and that the message is very deep. There's a lot to this subject. Let's just chug away here. I got another one for you here. Why has Billy Meier's story, in your opinion, been suppressed? And if it's being suppressed, who's suppressing it? Because
yes, good questions. Good questions. I will go into it this way. Let me back up just a drop and say this. If, indeed, there are extraterrestrial beings in craft that we see in the skies, which means that not all craft that we see in the sky by a long shot are extraterrestrial, but if there are those things, there has to be a reason for them appearing here, visiting, however they may be doing it, this little cosmic speck of lint in our solar system. So the reason is tied into our distant past, in the sense that some of the forefathers of the Pleiaren, along with other extraterrestrials, but some of the forefathers of the Pleiaren were the gods of our history, of our religions. Some of these gods also were progenitors of races here, or mixed peoples with Earth people. All that stuff is, contained in the history here. But at this time in history, because they know, and through their technology and their abilities, a lot about this world and the path that we are on, they have attempted to assist us without once again interfering directly in our world, as their forefathers did, which only resulted in gods, religions, which have resulted today in total insanity and a world at the brink of a third world war. So to a great degree, knowing this, their mission with Meier has been to try in a non-interfering way to insert into our world information, awareness of our true history, our true origins, of our true abilities, of the dangers of the path that we have created for ourselves, and most importantly, if we're willing, how to get ourselves off of that road to self-destruction into one where we can assure our own future survival. So I don't know if I went a little far afield of your question. Throw me your first question again so I can make sure I answer it properly.
Yes, on one of your videos, you mentioned that like the world has like an autoimmune type disorder to where we attack ourselves, and I totally agree with that statement. But the question was, why has the Billy Meier story, in your opinion, been suppressed? And if it has, who is suppressing it?
Right. Okay. Well, it is tied into what I was saying. I should have clicked my, turn brain on switch at that point. Here's the thing. Because the Pleiaren and Meier bring information that reveals that our religions are basically long-term delusions that do not accord with reality, and because our religions are so intimately involved in controlling people in the world, and because religion and politics are intertwined and coordinate actively and passively to control people in the world, and because the proven existence of an advanced extraterrestrial non-warlike race would be destabilizing to all of the powers that be, meaning military, governmental, economic, corporate, religious, and political, because the existence of such beings, if it was proven, would mean that these beings cannot be constrained by any terrestrial power, which all of the controlling powers realize the mass of humanity, not maybe those of us that think we can handle it, the mass of humanity would be terrified by that reality. Now, that means that it would destabilize control. People would go nuts. Some would worship these beings as gods, again, incorrectly. There would be suicides, murders, revolutions, breakdowns in countries if this was suddenly impressed upon the world as a reality and a fact. Therefore, intelligence agencies, secret services, and governmental and religious parties and organizations where this knowledge is present and known, they assist to suppress it so that their own vested interests are not threatened. Now, before saying anything more, let me add, it's understandable from the point of view of those who feel that they are entrusted with protecting the status quo and order and all the rest and their own interests, that they don't want that destabilization. They don't want that chaos that they fear. So part of the agenda, now we've established that there are these vested interests and they run in those fields. So through media, to a great degree, disinformation was created because the extraterrestrial presence, quote unquote, and there is none on the planet, we can get to that later, but the extraterrestrial presence above and around the planet that was noticed as far back as 1915 threatened people at that time who were in positions, military positions, who thought that these were secret weapons from the other side in the First World War. It proved not to be the case. Nonetheless, the leaders of countries, powerful countries, even those in opposition with each other, tacitly agreed to not reveal the existence of any extraterrestrial beings or vehicles or what have you, so as to maintain control. Once we get into the 1940s and 50s, especially in the U.S., intelligence services, and a lot of this was done with the assistance of the Franklin Delano Roosevelt administration, the decision was made to demonize extraterrestrials. This was assisted by the fact that some crashes like Roswell occurred where androids, not extraterrestrials, androids were discovered with these crafts that looked like these grays, which have now been turned into evil abducting aliens through a lot of diligent work on the part of military intelligence, secret services, etc. The story unfolds from there. We can go into any details at all that you want, but to then try to encapsulate the answer, the controlling elements of this, world of ours, for corporate, military, political, religious, and what have you, because of vested interests, choose to suppress this so that people will not freak out, but also so that people will not realize that we've been lied to and that the real power does not lie with any of these terrestrial elements, nor with any imaginary gods, saviors, saints, angels, extraterrestrials, and what have you. So that's it in a nutshell.
Okay, well, Billy's message, there's a lot of prophetic stuff in there. Like, I know that in the future you were talking about destabilization within the United States. There's going to be chaos, revolutions. I realized there was a few prophecies like that. Considering those prophecies, has Billy ever met with any government officials about his knowledge of the Pleiadians?
Government officials, is that what you said? Yeah. In 1979, Meier was authorized to write up a document to turn over to the lead investigative team and to give to one of the members, Lee Elders. Lee and Britt Elders were two of the investigators working under Lieutenant Colonel Wendell Stevens from the Air Force. Lee Elders also had connections to the CIA. And Meier knew this and the Pleiadian knew it. So Lee Elders was given the letter and the task to try to present to the Carter administration an overture, if you will, an offer to establish communication between the Pleiadian and the Carter administration through Meier as the intermediary for the Pleiadian. That offer was turned down by the Carter administration. Are you there? Can't hear you guys on this end.
Can you hear me, Michael?
Yes.
I don't know what happened to William. Let's see here. I've got a question. Let me ask you about the Talmud of Emmanuel. Explain to me a little bit about that, would you please, and what it stands for?
Okay. Was the last answer able to be heard?
I can hear it. I heard it.
All righty. The Talmud Emmanuel. Well, this is, this opens up a big part of the discussion on the Meier case.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's start here. The person that we are told who existed, named Jesus Christ, never existed. There was a man whose name was Emmanuel, spelled with a J, but also in our Old Testament and New Testament spelled alternately with an E and an I, mentioned once in Isaiah 7:14 and once in Matthew 1:23, I think it is. Emmanuel was the prophet for that time, as there had been 4 prophets before him, Enoch, Elijah, Isaiah, and Jeremiah. Emmanuel was the man who was crucified, but he survived the crucifixion, and he was a contactee for these Pleiadian people, as was the prophet after him, who, believe it or not, was known as Muhammad. All of the teaching, which was the same teaching brought by each of these prophets, was corrupted and altered in their times and turned into religions. We had, Judaism, we had Christianity, Islam. Emmanuel taught the same core teaching, as I said, the 4 prophets before him and the prophet after him, Muhammad. There was to be one more prophet for planet Earth, and that prophet would appear in the electronic age when everything could be written down and preserved, and unlike all previous times, wouldn't be subject to manipulation, alteration, and falsification by scribes or through oral legend and tradition, which always alters things. So far, is that making that clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. There's a lot that could be gone into about Emmanuel. I want to, at this moment now, right here, simply limit the information a little bit and say this. He survived the crucifixion with members of his family and a couple disciples, went on through different countries, finally settling in India, where Mary, his mother, died at a certain point when he was in his 40s or so. He married an Indian woman, not Mary Magdalene. He married an Indian woman. He had numerous descendants, children, one of whom, named Joseph, about 70 years after the crucifixion, brought the original writing and teaching that was taken down by Judas, who was not the betrayer, but was the true scribe and friend. And that was put into the very tomb of the crucifixion 70 years after that event. And then 1900 and some years later, it was discovered again by Billy Meier and Issa Rashid as it was intended to be. And the Talmud Emmanuel then would see the light of day, and that would show the falseness of the New Testament and the real teaching of Emmanuel and things like that. So that's just a little bit of an overview at this moment on Emmanuel and the Talmud.
Yes, I am back.
Sure?
I'm so sorry. I got dropped out of our show for a minute there. I had to reconfigure. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties. We can pick up wherever you left off, Michael.
Okay. Did you get a chance to hear what I had answered you on the other questions?
Basically, I answered the question and I got disconnected. I asked, has Billy ever met with any government officials? And I missed your answer because I disappeared.
Okay.
But
did your listeners get a chance to hear it? If not, I'll repeat it anyhow for you. But
no, they heard it. They heard it. We can just move on.
So, all right. Just so you know, there was an overture to the Carter administration, and it was turned down. And that offer came from the Pleiadian through Meier to Lee Elders, one of the original investigators who was also close to the CIA. It was brought to the Carter administration, offering this contact with Meier as the intermediary for the play iron, and the Carter administration turned it down.
Okay, well, here's a question for you. Out of the 12 or 1,300, and I may be quoting this wrong, the number, but out of the 12 or 1,300 photos and videos of beam ships and ET craft that Meier has accumulated, what is by far the smoking gun that made you a believer, or that made you not question any of the photographic evidence anymore?
Well, actually, it's not that I didn't question it, but when I first saw the photos, remember, it's 1979. I don't have a reference point for home computers and Photoshop, and nobody else in the world does either. And every other thing of so-called flying saucers that I'd ever seen were, some fuzzy black and white photos, lights in the sky, blurs and flashes. Here I'm looking at the clearest possible photos, including one where a French Mirage jet is in the background trying to intercept the UFO. And Meier's got, as you say, 1,200 clear daytime photos and nighttime in there, but mainly daytime. And they were so compelling. And when I read the information, who is this man, and blah, 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 it just had a ring of truth to it. He wasn't a fame seeker. He wasn't running around making lectures and giving slideshows or anything like that. He was telling the story. He was meeting with the investigators, and they had already had certain analyses done authenticating, the metal and photos and what have you. So subsequent to that, I got the chance to see the first photo analyses that report on that, and the report on film analysis, and the report on metal analysis, and the report on sound analysis. And since I was not polluted at that time, as many people are who've come to this in the digital age, many who weren't even born in 1979, who think that all of reality is what you find on your computer. Here it was, all pre-computer, time for the most part, where a one-armed man living in the rugged rural Swiss hillside has taken 1,200 clear daytime photos of up to 4 of these craft, films and video and metals and sounds, makes no, effort to get rich, run around, do stuff. When you see him speak in the films and interviews, you can just sense this is a very grounded, realistic person. He's not weaving fantastic tales about gray aliens floating him through walls and the rest of this malarkey. Here's a real man with a real story and real evidence to back it up. Now, since that time, we have 1, 2, 3 more recent photo analyses that are ironclad. They've been done by an independent professor in South America using state-of-the-art technology that he has listed for anybody that wants to duplicate or try to even debunk his work. There's now probably a combined something in the neighborhood of 150, 160 pages of reports, a couple videos. They utilize Google Earth, satellite image, you name it, to test out Meier's photos. And it comes out that these things are all the real deal. They're large objects. They are not models. They're not special effects. And so it's a slam dunk on the authenticity of the UFO evidence. And that is something that is completely, solely unique to the Meier case. There's nothing within light years of it. There's no shortage of people running around making ridiculous claims and sucking up the oxygen in the room, but not a one of them can prove a darn thing that they're saying.
Right, and some of that photographic evidence now, there was a huge controversy or a somewhat failed attempt at debunking of the wedding cake UFO. What would you...
I'm sorry, what? You dropped away there. William, I can't hear you on this end.
Hey, Michael, I am so sorry. I keep getting dropped out of my own show. It's really aggravating me. But my question was, out of that UFO wedding cake, there was a huge controversy. Considering the new info and data you have obtained from the Raoul Zawi, I think it is, what would you say to the debunkers about that?
I would say this very simple thing. Apart from the fact that there's this great 74-page report and 2 videos on it, anybody, a child, can now take from the internet one of Meier's original 1981 35-millimeter photographs, a nighttime shot of a gold UFO and a black background. They can take that, drop it into Photoshop, lower the contrast, raise the brightness, and voila, they will see appear on their own computers a UFO photographed from above, hovering over a gravel road with a little grassy hillside and a fence post, taken at night. And there is no way on earth that in 1981, Billy Meier had already figured out how to trick 21st century technology and build into a 35-millimeter film photograph the environment, the real environment that could only then be discovered 30-something years later. Anybody can do it. So any skeptic that drops that photo into Photoshop, anybody claiming that they've duplicated Meier's wedding cake craft, drops it into Photoshop, then they have to debunk themselves because it comes alive for anybody. That's the beauty of that. Anybody, your listeners, go do it. You will go, gee whiz, how did he do that? He did it by being above the craft in another craft and photographing it from above in the middle of the night. 64 photographs and a 5-minute video of the wedding cake ship have now been authenticated by Professor Zahi's analyses, and anybody can do it themselves. This is why you have to wonder why anybody on Earth is babbling about UFOs instead of running to the Meier case to find out what's really going on. Why are we bothering with ancient aliens and Hangar 1 and Roswell this and all of that when this is the real deal? And it's been, Meier's contacts have been going on for 72 years. He has been publishing his prophetic information since he was 11 years old, 66 years ago. Do we really need another UFO case to waste our time with? But I'm a little bit opinionated.
Well, you say that the Billy Meier would have to be a master of 30 different fields or close to it to amass and hoax all the evidence. Do you believe he hoaxed anything?
Not a thing. Now, unlike all of the skeptics and even most of the people that accept the case is true, I've spent hours and hours and hours with this man. I've met his family. I've met many of the other witnesses. You know, there's 100 other witnesses. Apart from the fact that I'm a witness to the craft myself within 20 feet, it's another story. But I've met the witnesses. I've met witnesses to the 14 attempts of the 22 on his life. I know the man. None of the people that shoot their mouths off attacking him in the case have ever sat down with him. There's no need for him to hoax anything. It's real. What would a guy possibly, who's been on board UFOs since he's 5 years old, what does he need to build models for when he's got the real deal? Let the model builders, build models.
Okay, that the reason I ask that is because there's I'm not a skeptic. I have an open mind, but not so open that my brain falls out of my ear and lands on the floor. But the one thing that bothers me about, well, there's probably two, but the one thing that bothered me about the Billy Meier case, that's why I asked that question, if he had hoaxed anything, is because that ray gun. Now, like the wedding cake UFO, it does look a little hokey. I'll give you that. It definitely does. And that's probably where some of that controversy came from. But he was given, I don't know if it was from Asket, if I'm saying that right, but he was given a laser pistol. Can you explain that?
Yes. On 2 occasions, I think it's 76 and 77, Manara and Alina maybe were the 2 extraterrestrial women, brought him what was for them an antique laser weapon, an antique. Now, first, well, I'll just tell the story, and then I'll tell the story about why it looks like a toy and all this stuff. Please remember, this case has been deliberately crafted by these people who might be a little smarter than we are to be controversial so that we'll at least start digging and paying attention. They're not going to they're not going to prove it to us. We have to actually prove it to ourselves through the evidence and information. So when Meier had use of this weapon, he shot holes through a couple of different trees on his property. This is a laser beam type of weapon, and it had quite a range. It could shoot a beam something like 22 kilometers or something, whatever it was. Now, the interesting part about the holes that are shot through the trees is that they're not round. They're oval. I have been with my nose right up close to the one remaining tree that is still preserved there, that has the hole through it. Oval. Now, try to drill an oval hole. Try to drill an oval hole. All right, we'll go back to 1976 and 77. And one of the astounding things was that shortly after Meier had put a hole in one of these trees, Wendell Stevens and the crew came right on that spot where he was. The weapon had been taken from him moments before, but there were twigs still smoldering in the forest. The investigators took a long string, ran it around the tree that shot the hole through, tied it through, and then took it all the way through in a straight line in the forest, where they were able to detect and photograph that anything in a direct line with that hole was singed, burned through. Branches and twigs completely burned all the way through. And there's photographs of it, of course. Now, you have to start wondering how this one-armed guy and of course there was no drills around, there were no welding torches lying around. The inside of the holes were smooth as glass because the beam that passed through was of such intensity and heat, it not only created the hole, it instantaneously seared all the saps the sap inside of the tree, so that it was like a glass-like smoothness. And as I say, there's still a remnant of one of those trees on the property. Now, you go to looking at the ray gun, and of course, you look at, oh my gosh, hey, anybody would say, well, that's got to be a toy. Well, of course, the investigators, because they had Meier's photographs, they thought, well, maybe this is a toy. So they went to every single toy store they could go to in Zurich and any of the cities in Switzerland. They looked in catalogs. Of course, you're talking not online now. This is all stuff you have to go and look. You have to find print catalogs. And no, it was close but no cigar. The red nozzle end of the weapon, well, it was either too long or too short for these toys. The rest of the structure of it, too short, too long, too narrow, too high, the wrong material. It wasn't a toy. Now, you then focus on the gold foil suit that we can see with the shiny metal cuff, to the hand of Elena, or whoever's holding the weapon in the photographs, because those photos are online. And people say, well, it's just got to be like a Mylar suit. Well, they went to sporting goods stores. They called fabric manufacturers. Nobody had a gold Mylar fabric. So they're going, well, we can't find any of this stuff. And this guy's living up here in the boonies. So they, of course, did investigation into his financial resources, the people he knew, possible accomplices, and there's nothing there. The guy's not loaded. He doesn't have money. He's getting a partial disability because he's lost an arm. He works as a night watchman. His friends are, local people, farmers too, and other people, maybe they work in a little inn somewhere or something. They're not sophisticated people by a long shot. There's no high-tech people, 1976, 77, living in the boonies out there. So everything they look into, oops, are you there?
Yeah, I was going to say, I get at least one core thing of what you're saying. He'd have to have a small group of Oompa Loompas going around him where nobody can see to do all that stuff in the background while the investigators are following him around.
And those people would have had to have been keeping quiet for over 40 years. You don't, for what? Because we know, listen, in his own group, there were people that fought with him, angry, they wanted to meet the extraterrestrials. There were people who betrayed him, but nobody's ever come forward from his group who said, well, I did it here. I was getting paid by a millionaire in Geneva or something. It didn't happen because it was real. And it is real. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Billy Meier is just such an interesting character. I mean, if you take all the prophetic stuff away, you take all the UFO stuff away, just his life in the beginning, like how he left home and then all the stuff that he did. I mean, that's amazing. Could you tell us a little about that and how he lost his arm?
Oh yeah. Well, let's just fill in a few blanks for you. Look, he's a 5-year-old boy who starts meeting with an extraterrestrial man who starts opening up the universe to him quite literally, and his role in it, and his past lives and his future, and other worlds, taking him, showing him things in our solar system. I mean, mind-boggling. Okay, you take that out of the equation, he runs off into the French Foreign Legion when he's 15 or 16. He doesn't like it. He walks out across the desert by himself to go, come back and eventually come back to Switzerland. Then he's meeting, people who are either world leaders or who will become major players on the world stage. He even meets Saddam Hussein when he's about 21. Meier in the late 50s is in the Middle East. He's in India, Turkey, West Pakistan. He's known as the Phantom. He's hired by police departments to bring in serial killers and mass murderers because he had nerves of steel. In the French Foreign Legion, he learned how to handle weapons and do all that kind of stuff. He never kills anybody, but he brings in these really super dangerous psychopaths. That's part of what he does. He's got 350 different occupations he takes on in a 12-year period as he's traveling through 42 countries, studying the world's major religions, meeting with all sorts of people, being kidnapped by pirates. I mean, you name it. This guy is, Lawrence of Arabia meets Indiana Jones, meets Luke Skywalker, and it's all real. The most documented, like we've got photographs since he was 4 years old, and then we've got photographs at 8 years old, and then when he's 11, then he's 21, he's in Paris here, he's in India there, and then in 1964, he co-discovers the Talmud of Emmanuel, and a year later, just as he had been told, his left arm is ripped off his body in a bus accident in Turkey. And he knew this would happen to him. Talk about have your mind blown. Not only do you lose the arm, you're warned about it. You're told, listen, we know this will happen to you. We can't interfere. It's your destiny. Get used to it, because if you continue in the mission, you're going to have to do everything with one hand for the rest of your life. And there's going to be way more than you can even imagine. So this is the most amazing man who's ever walked the face of the earth, the least assuming, the least flamboyant, but the most amazing and intelligent human being you could ever hope to meet, who knows more than all the professors you could drag out of universities, because this guy has learned it for himself. He's been taken through places we don't even know exist in this universe. He's been given scientific information years and decades in advance of our scientists, which we've been able to prove because they were in copyrighted published books. It's published stuff before we discover it. And his consciousness is such because his spirit is so ancient, because his spirit incarnated before as these other 6 prophets. Now he's the last prophet for this time. Good night. All of this in one little pot-bellied, gray-bearded, one-armed Swiss farmer? What do you do with that? Well, I suggest you start studying it, folks, for yourself, because you're not going to get anywhere with UFOs. Trust me, don't trust me. Find out for yourself.
One of the guys that helped Billy along the way was Father Zimmerman. Now, was he a contactee himself?
Yes, he was a telepathic contactee. He had been contacted telepathically by Meier's first contact person, whose name is Svath. And because Zimmerman was a pretty advanced person in consciousness, he was the parish priest, but he also knew that, religion wasn't what it was cracked up to be, and he was trying to gradually and gently move his, parishioners along in consciousness a bit. Svath was able to communicate with him. He became the terrestrial mentor for Meier for a while, because young Meier, 5, 6, 7, is hearing voices in his head. He's going on board UFOs, and he's wondering if he's nuts. And he went to Father Zimmerman because he couldn't even talk to his own family about this stuff at first. And Zimmerman said, look, don't worry. This isn't the work of a devil. This is good stuff for you. Trust this man. He's a good man. You know, your own instincts tell you that. And so he helped young Meier get through a little period of questioning and all of that. By the time Meier was 7 years old, he had the thinking capacity of a 35-year-old man. By 10, he'd already written a tract on Buddhist meditation that was then taken by some famous Buddhist organization, and they put their own name on it to put it out. At 11, he's writing his first prophecies. At 14, he publishes this major letter warning about climate change. The first person on earth to be doing that one, publicly. In 58, when he's 21, he's talking about global war. I mean, this is so far beyond all this that anybody can even imagine. And that's why you don't know about it, folks. Or that's why you've heard it's a hoax, so that you won't get educated, so that you'll chase lights in the sky and imaginary gray alien abductions, which are, when there's anything happening, it's simply secret military.
Yes, one of the other things, I guess, that I had a little bit of, I don't know, it makes me feel weird. Like, Billy's story is so fantastical in some areas. Like you said, there was 6 prophets. Well, when he found the Talmud Emmanuel, in some ways, it kind of resembles the Mormon prophet Joseph Smith in a few different ways. I think it does anyway. It was deciphering by, let me see if I get this name correct.
Isa Rashid.
Yes, Isha Rashid. That family, I mean, so Billy and him found the scrolls in Jerusalem in a hidden ancient crypt. Could you tell us about actually finding it? What happened to the scrolls and what the fate that befell Isha Rashid?
Sure. Let me go back just a little bit, because I think when you weren't able to hear this, I did say some of this that your audience may have heard it, but to kind of do a condensed version, Meier and Isa Rashid found this ancient tomb. There was a little hole in the outside of it looked like a burn or a hillside. They dug their way in. There were stones on the floor. They unearthed the stones and eventually found these resin-encrusted, animal skin-wrapped scrolls that were written in Aramaic. Isa Rashid had been, if you will, kind of telepathically moved into this whole process because he could read and write Aramaic, and he also could speak some German. So the scrolls were entrusted to him for translation. They are absolutely enormously different from anything in the Mormon religion. You don't have, in these Western religions, we have these gods, and I was perhaps explaining before, I don't know if you did hear, but see, when the Pleiaren involved themselves in this mission, it's because their own forefathers, in many cases, along with other extraterrestrials, represented themselves as the gods of our past, and around whom religions were created. There is no God. There is no guy. My friend in Australia, Ramirez, he calls him Sky Daddy. There's nobody floating around, I created you all and you have to pray to me and believe. This is the creation of religions, and this was based on these kind of crazy gods that were here, these human beings, these very powerful folks. And, there's no place where you go after death where Joe Smith or anybody else is on the right-hand side of any deity with an imaginary Jesus Christ who never lived on the other side. Emmanuel was the real man, but people can ultimately, with all things, and this case included, can go through this and determine for themselves. I'm conveying the information as I recall it in this case. So this discovery was made. The scrolls were entrusted to Isa Rashid. Intermittently, he was able to work on them over a several-year period, finally sent what translation he had done, which was about, I think, perhaps a third, a quarter of the scrolls, to Meier in Switzerland. They were in German. Meier had to, do a little work in cleaning up German words and what have you, but he would publish them for the first time, probably around 78, I think. And then they would come out in English for the first time around 1990, and they would be, that would be found in English by a man named James Deardorff, who, thinking it must be a Bible hoax, set out to debunk it, and then instead publishes a companion book called Celestial Teachings, and in which he states that the Talmud of Manuel is the original writing upon which the book of Matthew is based, not the other way around. And so that proceeds to come out. The scrolls in the possession of Isa Rashid, who finds out at that time that members of a couple different religions found out about him. They're out to get him. He flees with his family into a refugee village in Lebanon. They hide the scrolls in the walls of a building there. And then within a week, what do you know, the Israelis come in and basically level the village. Isa Rashid and his family escape with their lives. The scrolls are lost, ostensibly burned up and destroyed in the invasion. Probably around 1974 or so, if I'm remembering the dates right, Meier learns that Isa Rashid and his family were machine gunned to death in Baghdad by members of the Mossad. So, Rashid is dead. A chunk of the scrolls are translated, and only recently, after several editions of the Talmud have come out, has a final translation been done into German with the help of the Play-Aaron and their linguistic scientists and some other highly developed spiritual forms. So that's in German, and it may come out in English again, but we're not sure if and when. So that is a kind of, Cliff Notes version of the story of the Talmud, Emmanuel. Are you there? Oops. I don't hear anybody. There we are.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. This system, it keeps dropping me. Apparently, they didn't get the bugs out. But bear with me. My next question is, if our consciousness is here, and I may be getting this wrong, but if our consciousness is here to learn and to grow, why does our consciousness die with our bodies? Only the soul moves on, correct?
Well, almost correct. There's two things in our terminology. The spirit, which is the immortal, eternal part of every human being, which is kind of like a hologram, a holographic part piece of the universe, the creation itself. This is what we really mean when we talk about a God, but it isn't a God. It is this consciousness, this universe, which enlivens, creates everything in it, and also gives a special piece to human beings, which are all over the universe. We're certainly not the only ones. The soul, that term, really refers more to what, in the Meier case, they speak of the psyche, which is generally, primarily located around the area of, here it comes, the solar plexus. Hence, the term over time has been referred to as the soul, which is, not an accurate term. Now, we develop knowledge and experience and all the rest in each lifetime. Upon death, this soul, psyche, consciousness stuff is dissolved, and all of that material, all of that experience, knowledge, wisdom, what have you, is absorbed by the spirit, and also it is permanently retained and stored in what's called the comprehensive consciousness block, or the overall comprehensive consciousness. This is like a storage bank. Think of it as a huge etheric computer that accurately stores every single aspect and element of every single person's every lifetime. So it's not lost. It's simply that in each new reincarnation, the spirit comes in and attaches to the embryo at the 21st day. Hence, that's the beginning of the development of the fetus. And the personality, all of this other stuff, actually begins slowly to form right there in utero. And in our lives, as we develop, we are usually unconsciously also drawing from this storage bank, etherically, if you will, the elements from these past lives, plural, that can help us in developing our talents, abilities, etc., in our current life. And as we study the spiritual teaching, we realize that knowing this we can also use our current consciousness to desire to bring forward, to command, if you will, whatever terms you want, that which can benefit us in our current life, that we may become more productive, knowledgeable, wise, experienced, and draw upon any of these aspects that are available to us in this way. Now, we're not necessarily going to consciously know, oh yeah, now I'm suddenly aware of being a musician 500 years ago, or a fledgling scientist 90 years ago. No, it's more like once we start to realize this, our job then is to become receptive, consciously paying attention, and this is part of the core teaching anyhow, to every thought and impulse that we have 24/7, to notice, to consciously observe our thoughts and our intuitions and inspirations, to notice what feelings arise, what thoughts arise from those feelings, what actions we decide to take. And this is, we're coming down to the micro levels of how we individuals actually do create our lives, most of the time blunderingly, unconsciously, but with the option and the encouragement to know that this is what has been hidden to us by these bleeding religions, that to tell us it's all outside of us. We're sinners that need saviors and gods and saints and mullahs and rabbis and priests. No, flush it. This is the secret teaching, and it's available now basically for friggin' free. Go to the website, click on where it says Elements of the Spiritual Teaching. Start reading all those links and follow into the information, and on the other sites where you can find it. This is telling us, this isn't some New Age wet dream, simply, oh, you create your own reality, start imagining you're going to have a new car. No, this is about how you actually create your life moment by moment and start to interconnect with other conscious human beings who want to create a world that works. And it's now going to be, a bit of a challenge from here on, because we missed all the opportunities so far on most of this stuff that Play-Iron and Meier have been trying to get through to us, because we've allowed all these people to suppress it, and we've allowed ourselves to suck up all this nonsense entertainment about aliens and abductions and lights in the sky, and not look when we've had a chance to find Meier, Billy, who? Meeting with, oh, that can't be. Let's go play video games. So we now, if we want to, the core of this case is self-responsibility. Nobody's coming to save us, and they're not coming to invade us. That's still a long way off if it's going to happen. So, folks, this is what's been kept from you. What do you want to do about it now that you know? That's the bottom line.
Yeah, I believe that many people have been disenfranchised with religion and have been held down by it, controlled by it, and ultimately, spiritually wounded by it, by lots of religions. A lot of our chaos today on this planet revolves around religion, which is why okay, so Billy Meier was Enoch, Elijah, Azazel, Jeremiah, Emmanuel / Jesus, and Muhammad.
No, Billy Meier's spirit form, this is real important, and because then this will help people understand a little more about reincarnation. We can explain. His spirit form incarnated as those personalities and other people throughout history who weren't quite so prominent, like we all do. And yes, now that spirit form is simply Billy Edward Albert Meier. So we get away from deifying prophets, and we stop making them into messiahs and saviors and gods. This is simply a very basically thankless task that a spirit form has to be quite ancient, quite ancient, and must have enormous knowledge, wisdom, experience already in its own availability, but in each lifetime, no matter what that spirit is, it has to educate again, in that personality has to be educated again. We are not going to remember accurately our past lives. That just isn't available to us for very good reasons. And equally importantly, in every life, it's up to us to struggle to learn more, to keep developing our consciousness. And even young Edward Albert Meier had to be educated. He had the benefit of the extraterrestrials working with him and using technologies to accelerate his learning, because his spirit was primed and ready to go. But it still had to be, this personality had to do the hard work of the learning, as each of us must do. And Meier still continues to learn to this day as this person. But he is having available to him a phenomenal amount of knowledge and wisdom that he doesn't run around flashing at people, but he writes, he publishes, and people can study that and see what they can learn from it.
Okay, how did it come to pass that he ended up having a group of people come and stay with him? I don't know how that happened. Could you explain that a little bit, or how that came to be?
Sure. This, again, now we have to say according to information in the case. In the past, and we're going back many, many millennia, tens and hundreds of thousands of years and more, as previous personalities that his spirit form had well before being here on Earth as well, he was a powerful leader. His personalities were those of very powerful leaders who had been the leaders of space-traveling races. I'll compress the story in this sense. At a certain point in this history, that actually goes back billions of years with that spirit, but in more recent times, there were those who went astray, who had been part of peoples that he was connected to, who had been for a long time on a creational, truthful course, but who took a left turn and really went off and did, crazy warlike domineering, enslaving, crazy stuff. And he had to deal with those people when he came back so as to get them to amend their ways. They had to make that decision themselves, because many of them came with early prophets to this earth, and with an early Hanok and before Semyaz and all this stuff, and they messed things up here as the gods and the scientists working with the gods, and they did mating with the earth humans when they shouldn't have, and they mixed animals and humans together, and they did all sorts of crazy stuff. And they made an agreement that they would live and die then on this earth and come back in the reincarnational cycle to work each time with a prophet who would come to help to try to straighten out that damage that had been created through their own, misdeeds. There were also those who did not stray from the creational truth and path, who were associated with that spirit in his teaching and his incarnations, and they also would agree to incarnate here to help work to straighten things out. Many of those people are, of course, in terms of actual numbers, a phenomenally small number come and started to come to meet with Meier in the early 70s when he became public. They felt attracted. And these were people who were basically Europeans, who were the current incarnations of the spirits of many of these wrongdoers. And over time, of course, people who were those who were always connected with doing right. And nowadays, it doesn't much matter if people had extraterrestrial lifetimes or not, because anybody now that recognizes and resonates with this work is free to benefit from it and to contribute to it, either solely for their own evolution or to come together with other like-minded people, to participate in study groups, whatever it is. This is a very long mission that will evolve over several hundreds more years on Earth until this stuff is straightened out.
Well, that is very fascinating. Something else that fascinated me was that hologram. What are the facts surrounding that 1964 hologram that was displayed in India? I think it was by Ascot. Why and how
Correct.
was this done?
Yes. what we're referring to here, and again, this is on my website on theyfly.com, and you can, if anybody can't find any of the things that interest them, they send me an email, I respond, I'll get you the information. Now, to answer your question, Meier took his first UFO photos back in 1964 in India, at least the ones that have survived. Asket, a woman who works with the Plejaren race, but is from a race in an adjoining universe to ours, so it's a whole other thing. Asket, who started tutoring Meier when he was 16 years of age and took him on many adventures and all, she appeared with her peoples in their ships, that is, over this ashram where Meier was studying Buddhism in 1964. Meier took a bunch of photos of her ships, and many of just her ship alone, and then some with aid of the craft in the sky. There was a photograph taken of Meier, he gave the camera to somebody, where he is sitting on the ground wearing his little cowboy hat. In the background, you see the kind of spires, the tall parts of the ashram in India, and floating above Billy's head in the sky is a big white cross right up there in the clouds. Now, that photograph that you'll see on my website is part of the end part of our film, The Silent Revolution of Truth, that you can watch for free off of my website. And I had my nose right up close and personal to that photograph. The photo was taken with a 1964 Kodak Bellows type camera. That camera from the 1940s was a camera my father had, just like an identical camera. Special effects, no. Nothing fancy. You're lucky you just get a nice little photograph with that camera, and there it is. So that camera was not capable of doing any special effects. Now, that photograph, it's not painted on the photo. It's not white tape. It's a clear photo from 1964. That cross is a hologram that Asket generated and was then photographed above Billy's head. Now, when I thought about that photograph, my version, my explanation is as follows. Here we have the current incarnation of the prophet, the final incarnation in India. The prophet Emmanuel, who was probably the most well-known of the previous prophets, and then secondly would probably be Muhammad or maybe some of the Old Testament prophets. The prophet Emmanuel, who was crucified, there's the cross, lived out his remaining years up to 110 years of age in India. We have India, the cross from the fifth prophet, and the current incarnation of that prophet sitting underneath it. I'd say there's a bunch of symbolism there for people to consider. And so that would be the story of that most remarkable photograph taken in 1964.
Right on. There's a character in The Silent Revolution of Truth named, I'm going to say this wrong probably, but Fobal Cheng.
You got it right.
And I see that you had a behavior scientist for the U.S. Army examine the body language of Fobal Cheng and Billy Meier. Was that to help build their credibility? Because for Fobal being the former UN ambassador, that has to scream credibility.
Well, exactly. You know, she has credibility in and of her own right, as you say, because this is the woman who, when she was a young girl, was there. That was her grandfather's ashram. And she's in a photograph with her grandfather and I think her sister. And she witnessed all this. She saw the ships. She saw Asket a number of times. She met Meier, the whole deal. So years later, people start asking her when they start putting two and two together. So she comes forward and she makes a presentation. Well, at that point, she already had retired from the UN, 12 years in the General Assembly representing Cambodia. Highly credible person. Okay, so's Billy, in my opinion. But when we're making that film, I thought to myself, why don't we do a couple things here, which is bring in people that can, give an objective, even if you want skeptical analysis or viewpoint. I also brought in a therapist who would, could say, well, maybe this guy's crazy, whatever. I just said, let's do it. We don't want this to just be cheerleading for the Meier case. We've got to be as fair and impartial as we can. So I contacted a guy. His name was Michael Arndt, who was a certified expert in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and who was hired by the Army and the U.S. Special Forces and all to train soldiers in reading body language using NLP, because they had to make split-second decisions of life and death. Somebody comes into your field of view, you've got to be able to get a very quick sense of their body language. Do they pose a threat? Are they congruent? Are they incongruent? Are they hiding something? Could they pose a danger? Blah, blah, blah. So we gave him much more time. What we did was we said to him, here, we're going to show you a couple videos. We're turning the sound off. So even though this is in German, I don't know, because he might have been able to understand German for all I know. I said, just read the body language from these two people, and then we'll take a shot here. You tell us what you think. And as you said, and as people can see for themselves, in both cases, he gave them thumbs up for credibility. They believe what they're saying. They appear to be honest. There's no deceit. Okay, good. Oh, we got that down. So this is something that none of your people that run around claiming to be contactees would survive. They wouldn't read that way. It just suffices to say. But that's another story. In terms of Meier, in terms of Pobal Cheng, they get a clean bill of health from this guy. And basically the therapist says, hey, maybe, people could be crazy if they think there's ETs, but then again, there could be. So who's to say, So we do a little devil's advocacy.
Yeah, just because you may be delusional doesn't mean it's not happening.
That's right. Just because, there's that saying, just because you're paranoid, it doesn't mean somebody's not out to get you. It could be. Yeah. So,
absolutely. Okay. You describe audio from the sky in a part of one of the videos. I think I can hear myself. You might have to mute your mic when I'm talking, possibly. I don't know. Okay, I'll keep going anyway. But you mentioned audio from the sky that people heard from miles away, and they came to find its source. Was that from a mothership or a beam ship, or was that some kind of a telepathic thing for the Polarans to do?
Okay. That was from a beam ship. It was Semyaze did. I think there were actually 4 sound ops, so to speak. And interestingly enough, at least one of them, there were up to 17 people, including an undercover policeman. Meier brought 1 and sometimes 2 separate tape recorders to these events, which were held outdoors. I've been to one of the locations. It's just out in the middle of a clearing. The only thing around it is a forest. Good luck setting up speakers or something. 1978, 77, it's not going to happen. So he did these recordings of the beam ship, and he turned them over to the investigative team, and they took them to something like 4 different sound studios, one of which I actually worked in once doing recordings in Los Angeles, Excalibur Studios. The other sound studio of note was the Naval Undersea Labs in Connecticut. And in all cases, when they analyzed the sounds, they determined that they were not made by any known source. They were irreproducible with any instruments they had at the time. It would have taken a bank of up to 9 synthesizers of the day to come close to duplicating the sounds, because there were something like 32 simultaneously interfacing discrete frequencies, different frequencies. This is a guy out in the middle of a field, right, using Iowa tape recorders in the 1970s. And they said, look, this is And they showed, we even showed in Silent Revolution of Truth from the series of videos that were done by the elders, Britt Elders, and Wendell Stevens. We showed the scoping that was going on of it. As a matter of fact, some skeptic, it may be even, who was the skeptic? I don't know, some skeptic said, oh, it's just a vibrating fishing line, the guy used fishing filament. And here, see, it's the same sound. Well, somebody actually went and scoped the fishing filament sounds and then showed the graph for that and the graph for Meier's recordings, and it's not even, in the same universe, because you've got a Meier's thing, you've got all these frequencies going on at the same time, and the fishing line is making, a squeaky sound. So we give the skeptics that have done this A for effort. At least they went and tried to, debunk and prove, oh, it's just this. Good, go ahead, try. It's the real deal. The sounds are real, and they're still probably close to irreproducible. You'd need some real sophisticated synthesizing work to layer that up.
Now, speaking of the skeptics, some of those have recent. I'm not sure if it's recent or not, but I did. I looked over your material, and then I went and looked up some other material, and there's a picture that Billy took when he was inside a UFO, I believe. He was either on a planet that had dinosaurs, or he was back in time. I'm not entirely sure about if he was back in time or not. But anyway, he photographed it, and it looked like a pterodactyl, and it was dropping something or had something in its mouth. Anyway, the skeptics or the debunkers, they claim that Billy photographed this in a book. It was an illustration or something like that. Have you heard of this?
Sure. As a matter of fact, here's what we've learned from this. There are, and of course, this is something that was told to Meier and by Meier years and years ago as well. That is this, that many of Meier's photographs got intercepted before they were returned to him from the developer, because he didn't develop them. And many were manipulated. There were falsifications inserted. In some cases, completely false photographs were simply inserted in what he got back. And Meier would take the photographs and just basically throw them in shoe boxes and stuff. And then he would give them to the investigators. He didn't pay attention to all of them. He had a few things going on in his life. He was dodging assassins, going on contacts, taking photos, being on the ships, fighting with his wife, dealing with the family, working as a night watch. He had a few things going on. Now, it appears, and this is according to to Meier's people and the extraterrestrials, that falsified photographs, which may have well included photographs of dinosaurs, perhaps of a primitive man, some photos that Meier had taken out in space and around Mars, that some of these may have been falsified or phony, photos inserted into his collections to discredit him. But here's the important thing. Those are not photos that, even if they were absolutely real, that we could prove. There's no way we can prove that Meier was taking photographs of dinosaurs, because we can't go to where there are dinosaurs and prove that these are what Meier was photographing or not. When it comes down to the real proof in the photographic evidence, that's ironclad now. You've got the original photo analyses, you've got the analysis of the wedding cake craft, you have the analysis of the film of the pendulum craft, and the just released energy ship photographs all have been authenticated. So the extraterrestriality of his photographs, of the objects in them, is now established. There may be crappy photographs in there about the Soyuz docking or other stuff. That doesn't make the case, nor does it break the case. So we'd have to shrug off of stuff, because here's the bottom line. There have been so many documented attempts to kill this man that have failed, thankfully. If you can't assassinate a man, your next best bet is to try to assassinate his character. And failing even that, what has happened? They simply suppress now. So the first things you're going to find very often, if you go online and search Billy Meier, you'll find the skeptical attacks, because that stuff is pushed up deliberately so that people will be turned away from the Meier case and not realize what suckers we've been played for by the stupid UFO community, UFO industry, as well as all of the intelligence agencies and everything else. Just let me add something. I put up a blog yesterday in terms of when we're doing the show right now, yesterday, and I ripped a new one on a guy named Richard Dolan, who had recently been interviewed on Coast to Coast. And just for the record, I've been interviewed on Coast to Coast about 16 times. But Dolan, a big, famous UFO researcher, my goodness, he just can't seem to find the Meier case or really look into it, and it could be, here's a guy that rattles on about stuff that's completely irrelevant to our lives, all these old cases that you can't do anything with anyway, but the only ongoing case right now with the best evidence in the world, oh my goodness, well, I'm not so sure about that. So this is what we have keeping genuinely sincere people away from the Meier case. These dolts and imbeciles, and pardon me, I alone am responsible for these comments, not William, not the show, and not the network. I will take the heat on it because I've had enough of these phonies who can't seem to belly up to the bar and deal with the Meier case because they want to sell you books on Roswell and Rendlesham and everything else that you can't prove. So did they try to assassinate Meier's character with hoax photographs? I'd say there's a good chance. And those are not the photos that make or break the case.
Yeah, well, I have to be completely honest, and I was ready to dismiss Billy Meier as being a fraudulent case, but I tell you what drew me back in, and it surprised me actually, and it was the prophecy. Like, how in 58 can you say there's going to be global warming, and then in the 70s they're saying there's going to be a mini ice age? That's what the scientists were saying. I don't know, stuff like that just blows my mind.
Well, yeah, William, in that same prophecy where he talks about global warming, he also predicted 2 U.S.-Iraq Gulf Wars, AIDS by name, portable cell phones, plastic credit cards, the European Union, which didn't exist yet, and the fact that the European Union and the USA would be trying to biochip every man, woman, and child on the face of the earth and enslave them. He's publishing this in 1958. He's foretelling that every home will have a television and a computer interconnected electronically around the world. The Internet. Billy Edward Albert Meier, 1958. Do we really need to talk about Roswell again, folks? When people are willingly now, like sheep, already letting themselves be biochipped, when your privacy is now a thing of the past? My goodness, this man has been warning us in 1981, foretelling the current Russian military movements, Islamic radicalism raging through Europe, and 2 coming civil wars. In 87, he reiterates that and then tells us that the United States of America will break up after these 2 civil wars into 5 independent territories, that there will be an epidemic called Ebola, 1987. Come on, folks. Things have been kept from you.
So what's the end game here? Do we have to change this stuff for ourselves, or we're basically screwed already?
Well, it's been a matter of diminishing returns here because the longer we go with people not knowing and not realizing, first of all, that all the stuff has been foretold to warn us so we wouldn't have it happen, that now that we're in this, that there's only so much that we can stave off from here on in a way. I just put out a blog the other day about the snows. Meier foretold all this stuff about when he was in 51. He's warning climate change, increased blizzards, snowstorm, all this stuff. 58, he's letting us know it's coming. 64, same thing. Sea levels rising, snowstorms. He keeps on warning, and of course nobody gets to see this stuff because they're making sure that it doesn't get out there day after day and year after year. And so now, Waka, here we are coming up on 2015, only 5 years from when Meier was telling us, he's first told in 1975
that around 2020, if the people in this country don't wake up, we've got anarchy here. On top of which, somewhere around these times, the Russians are coming across Alaska and Canada after they clean house in Scandinavia. People, wake up. Smell the coffee here. Stop chasing Kim Kardashian's butt around and worrying about who's winning games where overgrown boys are throwing balls through hoops or kicking it down fields and all the rest of it. Pardon me, your ass is grass.
Yeah, our civilization isn't headed in the right direction. It's buy, consume, and by the way, throw it away. It's cheaper to get a new one. On one of my first shows, we talked about the earth that's basically dying. And people have to wake up to change it. And I'm glad his message pertains that we have to wake up and do things, because we do, regardless if this, if everything's factual or not.
Well, look, yes, we do. And if people do their due diligence, they can determine how factual, how accurate, how verifiable it is. Look, we have to wake up, because we're going to have a rough time now. There's just no way around that. If we had millions of people that hit their keyboards and went, Billy Meier, who's this? And just started to be made aware of this, we'd have a big change in the world, just in consciousness, from 1 million people doing that. And then they're spreading the word. This is why it's so insidious that you can't get this mentioned in the mainstream. You can't bring this to the mainstream because they shoot it down and suppress it. But so what? Make it go viral, people. Do your part. Become your own little hero. If you think, but first do your due diligence. If this seems like it's important stuff, start blasting people that you think would be interested. Don't give it to people that don't want to hear about it. And start asking all these, UFO people and all these experts why they're not talking about this. Now that you know it's real, now that you've dropped that photo into Photoshop and voila, it's a real UFO floating over a road. Can't be hoaxed. You think anybody's going to be able to turn to you and say, "Oh, well, the Meier case is a hoax. It's all models." Oh, really? Show me how he did that in 81, because I got the photograph and I just cranked it and it's real. And anybody can do it. And we're using 21st century technology on 20th century technology. Don't try and pull the wool over my eyes. Go sell that to somebody else. So This is where we can start to smell the coffee. Like you said, wake up, people.
Yeah. Well, you said that you had, I believe in, and did they listen? You said you had 7 sightings of your own. Would you be willing to share any of that with us?
Oh, yeah. I think that I'm trying to think if 6 of them would be that interested. Look, I've had sightings. I've had witnesses with me on 4 out of the 7, I think. 3 of the 7, I'm pretty sure were ET, probably the Pleiaren. 1 for sure was a Pleiaren craft. That's the most interesting of the sightings. I mean, the other ones were interesting, but I was living in 2011. I was living up in the mountains of Brazil, and in this beautiful little cabin in a secluded, just a paradisical location. I had finished doing a radio show. It's, October 3rd, 2011. I finish at 10 p.m., and I get this little impulse, to go leave my little computer in this cold little cabin I was in, open the French doors to the outside world, and look up in the sky. And there I think I see a star. Oh. But then it starts to move. Oh, maybe it's a firefly. Then I realize, wait, that ain't no star, it's no firefly. And I was startled. I have to admit it. I was startled for a second. I got a little afraid, because then it started to descend, and it made a turn, and it starts going off to my left, and it's obviously under conscious control. And for 15 to 20 seconds, and that's not a short period of time when you're watching something move slowly and deliberately, right there. So, and then it appeared, and I went, wow, that's pretty interesting. So in the morning, I suddenly thought, wait a minute, I got to check something. So I went back, opened my doors, I stepped out, and I went, yep, that was not up in the sky. Because what I remembered, see, at night, it's so dark there, I could probably look up what the phase of the moon was, and it was probably a dark moon, because I was 8 to 10 feet from a tree bank that obscured the sky. At night, I wouldn't be able, looking up in the direction I was looking, all I could see really were trees. So this thing was in front of the trees, putting it about 20 feet from me. And in the film, the new film, And Did They Listen, I actually show a photograph in there. It was taken by the folks in Switzerland in broad daylight, where they were photographing their work. They're working on the property, and accidentally they captured actually two of these objects, and that was what I saw. They're like egg-shaped discs or craft, glowing white, and at night, it was glowing white, all right, and it moved away from me. And a week later, I went to Switzerland, and then I met with Billy, and he said, oh, yeah, it's a telemeter craft to play and monitor you for something or whatever. And like I said in the film, it's interesting. It's not necessarily important, but it's interesting, and it was fun. And I can guarantee you at this point that I've been closer to an extraterrestrial craft than any of these babbling UFO experts who have to go and dig up, everybody else's sightings to talk about them. So the other ones were craft in the sky, quite clearly. Some of it may have been, the first one I ever saw, I think could have been military. That was here in the Sedona area. I was with a guy named Randy Winters and another guy, Phil McCaney, and this thing flew by at night. It was fairly large. It was giving off sparks, orange, blue, green, gray, silver stuff, and it was silent, and it flew into the side. It looked like it flew into the side of a mountain. Didn't make a sound. And then I saw a cylinder in the sky with a buddy of mine, broad daylight in Santa Monica. It was just hovering in the sky. We took a bike ride. That was up there. Then I was with a girlfriend in Sedona in 95 or 6. And I look up in the sky and I see this gray commercial kind of jet plane going by. And I see these things behind us. So I quickly said to her, hey, Victoria, do you see what I see? And she said, well, I see that. What are those things? I said, do you see them, huh? She said, yeah. There were like 5 or so round objects jockeying behind the tail assembly, like for position. As the jet was flying, they were keeping up with it and jockeying. And then I had a couple of sightings in Los Angeles. I was lying on the ground taking a break from work outside, and this disc, like way up, whitish disc came overhead and stopped thousands of feet in the air, straight above me, did right angles, did some maneuvers and turns, and then shut off. And it did it a second time when I was out there like a week later. But I just thought, well, that's interesting. What can I do with it? But it was the sighting in the mountains of Brazil. That was the one where I go, okay, somebody out there said hello. So it was that kind of deal.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've had a few type of sightings myself that got me interested in the field when I was young and things like that. But you mentioned sparks flying out of the craft you saw. I've seen a craft a picture was taken. I believe Billy took it, and it was of a craft, but it looked like it was like fire or something. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that wasn't of the craft itself. That's a photograph that was taken, I think, by Guido Moosbrugger, where Meier was standing beneath a craft, and he had a microphone in his right arm, his only hand there. He was holding it up to record the sounds of the ship of Quetzal that was above him, and that I think simultaneously had generated some kind of ionized field around him or something that created all those sparks. Now, the skeptics thought that he was creating it by whirling a sparkler around or something, but the fact of the matter is that when you look closely at the photograph, Meier's hand is stone still there. He's not whirling anything around. The microphone is seen. There's no blur, not like, like here's an action shot or something. So that was, just one of those unique photos that somebody took of Meier while around a craft.
Right on.
But again, it's interesting. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, we're starting to run a little low on time. I wanted to make sure we had plenty of time to plug anything you would like your new documentary and your website. And I believe that you have a special offer for the listeners tonight.
I do. I've got a special offer. I've got this thing where they can get two of the films, the newest and the one right before it. In other words, they can get the one you saw and Did They Listen, right? That was the newest. And there's one before it called As the Time Fulfills, and that one I put in something like 55 specific examples of Meier's prophetically accurate scientific information. It's pretty mind-boggling, and a whole bunch of other stuff. We show the information that he, gave when he was 11, warning about environmental destruction and ray weapons. This guy was 11. He foretold stuff way into the future. So there's a deal on that, and I think if they go on my blog, you know what? There's a blog, They Fly blog, and they read a couple of the blogs, they're going to see that I posted that deal on the blog. If they don't find it easily, all they have to do is drop me an email and just say, deal, special, offer, anything, just so I know it's coming. And what I'll do is I'll send them the link to that. So it'll be real easy.
Well, what I was going to do is when I do my slideshow for this episode and I put it on YouTube, I'm going to put all the links and stuff in there as well. And on the show link here, after we're done with the show, I'm going to go through and put the links in there as well. So
that'd be great. If you have the links, or do you need me to send them to you, or do you have them?
Yeah, just email them to me, and I'll make sure they get put up.
Yeah, good. I'll email those to you as soon as we're done with the show, and then you can just copy them, and your folks are certainly welcome. Please use them. And you can watch Silent Revolution of Truth for free through my website. It's a YouTube thing with the annoying commercials, but you can watch that one for free, and you can get a great deal on these two. And by the time you're done, I think you're going to know where you stand on the Meier case. And, of course, again, free. My website, my blog, read to your heart's content. Hundreds of pages. My blog alone, 370 blog entries that I put on there. So be my guest, and then if you do want to buy these films and get these special offers, you can give gifts to people if you want, or give it to yourself. That's my plug, and William will have the links for you, within moments after we're done tonight. And if anybody still has questions that is listening to the show, please ask them, and then you can also email me stuff, and I will get back. I answer, but it takes me a little while.
Well, that's excellent. I really enjoyed having you on the show tonight, Michael. We went over a lot of really good information, and next week we'll have Philip Langdon on, and short time after that, I'd love to have you both on together.
Oh, I'd be delighted. That'd be fun, because as I had mentioned to you privately previously, I encouraged Phil Langdon for over 4 years to do his best work on it, because I know the Meier's stuff is authentic, and I said go ahead. I actually corrected one of his attempts so that he would have a better shot at making a good impression. And once we have that show the two of us are on, that'll be the first time I interact with him live. That'll be great. Yeah, that should be an awful lot of fun. Well, like I said, we really enjoyed having you on tonight, Michael, and I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to play the next week's announcement. Okay, so we're done, and I'll send you those links, yes? Absolutely. Thank you very much, Michael. My pleasure, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hi, this is Karen Newman from the show About Oneness, and here's what's coming up on the Enlightenment Evolution Network 1 and 2 starting on Monday, November 17th until Sunday, November 23rd. Simply put, Rob Gauthier, founder of the EEN and the host of the show that started it all, the Enlightenment Evolution Hour, has put together the greatest metaphysical radio network ever. 7 days a week, we have shows that will aid you on your path to enlightenment, evolution, and ascension. On EEN1, on Mondays, 7:30 p.m. Pacific, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, is Heart to Heart Talk Radio with your host, Daniel Scranton. Join Daniel and his featured guests discussing a wide variety of metaphysical topics. Daniel channels the Creators, the Hathors, Ophelia the Fairy, and Archangel Michael, and the latest, the Unicorn Collective. Daniel and his guests will take phone calls and questions, and it's sure to generate high-frequency discussions. You can find more about Daniel at his website, danielscranton.com, and also on Facebook. Go to the Events tab on Daniel's website to learn more about Daniel's upcoming events. Daniel's guest on the 17th of November is his lovely wife, Lana Boss, where they will be discussing the importance of living where you want to live. And then on the 24th of November, Susan Fittner, author of From Your Vision Board to Your Bedroom, will be Daniel's guest. On Tuesday at noon, also 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, please join hosts Megan Crandallmeyer and Rachel Archelaus for Radio Inspiration, Expression, and Abundance for their show, Soulfulpreneur. Spiritual business specialists Rachel and Megan will bring you inspiring conversations with people who are living their soul purpose. Frequent guests include psychic mediums, channelers, coaches, artists, and authors. They end every show with psychic readings and business coaching. Your questions about your spiritual business or life purpose journey are welcome. On the 24th of November, Rachel and Megan's guest is Robert Scheinfeld, author of Busting Loose from the Money Game. Wednesday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. Pacific, is the show that started it all, the Enlightenment Evolution Hour with host Rob Gautier. Rob channels Treb on the first Wednesday of each month and will take callers' questions. On the third Wednesday, we'll have special guests such as guest channelers and other metaphysical teachers. The other 2 Wednesdays are freestyle call-in shows to discuss whatever callers have on their minds. Tune in to Rob on Wednesday nights, and you can also find him at TrebChanneling.com and on Facebook at the Enlightenment Evolution Network group page. Rob's guest on the 28th of November will be Lee Harris. If you are interested in the CE5 Day Channeling Workshop in Asheville, North Carolina, go to TrebChanneling.com, where you can find more details on how to register. Starting on Sundays from September 14th, TrebChanneling.com offers hour-long meditation classes. Please go to TrebChanneling.com to register. Another project near and dear to Rob's heart is the much-anticipated sequel to the groundbreaking film Tuning In, called Tuning In Now. The movie will feature channelers such as Daryl Anka and Bashar, Lee Carroll and Cryon, and our very own Rob Gautier and Treb. Tuning In Now will explore the amazing work of today's top channels and how they are helping to awaken the consciousness of the planet. The film is in fundraising stages at the moment, and with a contribution for as little as $15 all the way up to $50, you can help make sure that this film is made. Please go to Indiegogo.com, that's Indie, I-N-D-I-E, Gogo, G-O-G-O.com, and type in the search Tuning In Now 2. That's the number 2. Tuning In Now with the number 2. On Thursday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. Pacific, join host Philip Malika with the Consciousness Evolution Hour. Join Philip and his special guests and co-hosts as they discuss the shift, ascension, timelines, metaphysical concepts, and the fifth dimension. Find Philip at the Consciousness Evolution 2.0 group page on Facebook and on YouTube. On Friday, The Earth Experience with your host, Kalina Angel, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. Pacific. The Earth Experience explores our soul's expansion through our human experience on Earth. Kalina will help you to navigate and expand through the exciting confusions that we are manifesting as new 5D beings. On Sundays, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 11 a.m. Pacific, is my show, About Oneness. About Oneness is a weekly radio program focused on celebrating the ongoing conscious awakening of our planet and our realization of oneness. I'm an American originally from Charleston, South Carolina, now living in Europe, The Hague, the Netherlands. I'm an integrated channel, medium, Reiki master, and metaphysical teacher. I have a varied and diverse background, including that of being a singer, dancer, writer, as well as working in the sport, nutrition, and fitness world. As a channel, I bring forward the information of my non-physical guides called Theos, whose message is always that of oneness and unconditional love. This show for me is about integrating all of my experiences and following my highest excitement, which is tapping into the truth of the universe. If you would like to find more about me and my show and my upcoming guests, as well as see many videos and channelings and teachings, you can go to aboutoneness.com. On the Enlightenment Evolution Network 2. On Tuesdays, join host Victoria Vives at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. Pacific, hosting Earth, Sky, People Radio, your bridge between heaven and earth. Subjects will include planet Earth becoming part of an intergalactic society, star seeds and extraterrestrial life, living in oneness with one another, with Mother Earth and with life beyond Earth, the Interstellar Alliance, also known as the Galactic Federation of Light, music, frequency and sound healing, question and answer interviews, shamanism, ancestral wisdom, and the Star Nations, self-sustainative and regenerative living, and much, much more. Go to victoriavives.com/radio where people can start submitting questions for upcoming shows. Victoria's guest on Tuesday, November 18th is special guest Jessie Ann Nichols-George, sharing about her compassion tour and sharing tools with you for maintaining personal identity, being in crowds, and or being around those that may not share your interests or values. On Saturday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 6 p.m. Pacific, the Pied Piper and Texas Rebel hosting the show Disclosure Now. Disclosure Now is the On the Edge of Our Seats show that covers all topics of disclosure, from the world's most famous and obscure UFO cases to cryptozoology, conspiracies, and all things that go bump in the night. Pied Piper started his journey in Michigan in 1993 as a preteen seeing Bigfoot and never could get enough of investigating all things paranormal. Texas Rebel is a wild Texas man who loves the same journey and has studied these same things for years. Join them as they cover all things in the human experience that just cannot be answered by anyone. Listen here and call in on the number 347-215-8586. The Pied Piper and Texas Rebel will have as their guest on November the 22nd, Michael Horn, a Billy Meier researcher. Coming soon on Sundays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 1 p.m. Pacific, The Resonance and Tension, hosted by Soul and Neil Gar. The Resonance and Tension show is dedicated to all things frequency and vibration. They will showcase conscious musicians who infuse frequencies into their music and have set out to uplift and raise the vibration of humanity through their music. They will have in-depth discussions with various artists about their passion, purpose, and personal journey that led them to where they are now. Additionally, they will routinely have guests on the topics of free energy, technology, and other quantum modalities and technologies that are coming into existence now. The Resonance Intention is a platform for artists, musicians, and inventors to increase awareness of their personal approach in order to contribute to the paradigm shift we are currently within. And remember, you never have to miss any show on the Enlightenment Evolution Network 1 or 2. All shows are available to listen to again immediately after they air on playback. Also, now the EEN Networks 1 and 2 are archiving all videos for all of their shows weekly. From 1 day to 3 days at the latest, these shows will be uploaded on youtube.com/network enlightenment. Or if you simply Hi, this is Karen Newman from the show About Oneness, and here's what's coming up on the Enlightenment Evolution Network 1 and 2 starting on Monday, November 17th until Sunday, November 23rd. Simply put, Rob Gauthier, founder of the EEN and the host of the show that started it all, the Enlightenment Evolution Hour, has put together the greatest metaphysical radio network ever. 7 days a week, we have shows that will aid you on your path to enlightenment, evolution, and ascension. On EEN1, on Mondays, 7:30 p.m. Pacific, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, is Heart to Heart Talk Radio with your host, Daniel Scranton. Join Daniel and his featured guests discussing a wide variety of metaphysical topics. Daniel channels the Creators, the Hathors, Ophelia the Fairy, and Archangel Michael, and the latest, the Unicorn Collective. Daniel and his guests will take phone calls and questions, and it's sure to generate high-frequency discussions. You can find more about Daniel at his website, danielscranton.com, and also on Facebook. Go to the Events tab on Daniel's website to learn more about Daniel's upcoming events. Daniel's guest on the 17th of November is his lovely wife, Lana Voss, where they will be discussing the importance of living where you want to live. And then on the 24th of November, Susan Fittner, author of From Your Vision Board to Your Bedroom, will be Daniel's guest. On Tuesday at noon, also 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, please join hosts Megan Crandallmeyer and Rachel Archelaus for Radio Inspiration, Expression, and Abundance for their show, Soulfulpreneur. Spiritual business specialists Rachel and Megan will bring you inspiring conversations with people who are living their soul purpose. Frequent guests include psychic mediums, channelers, coaches, artists, and authors. They end every show with psychic readings and business coaching. Your questions about your spiritual business or life purpose journey are welcome. On the 24th of November, Rachel and Megan's guest is Robert Scheinfeld, author of Busting Loose from the Money Game. Wednesday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. Pacific, is the show that started it all, the Enlightenment Evolution Hour with host Rob Gautier. Rob channels Treb on the first Wednesday of each month and will take callers' questions. On the third Wednesday, we'll have special guests such as guest channelers and other metaphysical teachers. The other 2 Wednesdays are freestyle call-in shows to discuss whatever callers have on their minds. Tune in to Rob on Wednesday nights, and you can also find him at trebchanneling.com and on Facebook at the Enlightenment Evolution Network group page. Rob's guest on the 28th of November will be Lee Harris. If you are interested in the CE5 Day Channeling Workshop in Asheville, North Carolina, go to trebchanneling.com, where you can find more details on how to register. Starting on Sundays from September 14th, trebchanneling.com offers hour-long meditation classes. Please go to trebchanneling.com to register. Another project near and dear to Rob's heart is the much-anticipated sequel to the groundbreaking film Tuning In, called Tuning In Now. The movie will feature channelers such as Daryl Anka and Bashar, Lee Carroll and Cryon, and our very own Rob Gautier and Treb. Tuning In Now will explore the amazing work of today's top channels and how they are helping to awaken the consciousness of the planet. The film is in fundraising stages at the moment, and with a contribution for as little as $15 all the way up to $50, you can help make sure that this film is made. Please go to indiegogo.com, that's Indie, I-N-D-I-E, GoGo, G-O-G-O.com, and type in the search Tuning In Now 2. That's the number 2. Tuning In Now with the number 2. On Thursday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. Pacific, join host Philip Malika with the Consciousness Evolution Hour. Join Philip and his special guests and co-hosts as they discuss the shift, ascension, timelines, metaphysical concepts, and the fifth dimension. Find Philip at the Consciousness Evolution 2.0 group page on Facebook and on YouTube. On Friday, The Earth Experience with your host, Kalina Angel, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. Pacific. The Earth Experience explores our soul's expansion through our human experience on Earth. Kalina will help you to navigate and expand through the exciting confusions that we are manifesting as new 5D beings. On Sundays, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 11 a.m. Pacific, is my show, About Oneness. About Oneness is a weekly radio program focused on celebrating the ongoing conscious awakening of our planet and our realization of oneness. I'm an American originally from Charleston, South Carolina, now living in Europe, The Hague, the Netherlands. I'm an integrated channel, medium, Reiki master, and metaphysical teacher. I have a varied and diverse background, including that of being a singer, dancer, writer, as well as working in the sport, nutrition, and fitness world. As a channel, I bring forward the information of my non-physical guides called Theos whose message is always that of oneness and unconditional love. This show for me is about integrating all of my experiences and following my highest excitement, which is tapping into the truth of the universe. If you would like to find more about me and my show and my upcoming guests, as well as see many videos and channelings and teachings, you can go to aboutoneness.com. On the Enlightenment Evolution Network 2, on Tuesdays, join host Victoria Vives at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. Pacific, hosting Earth Sky People Radio, your bridge between heaven and earth. Subjects will include planet Earth becoming part of an intergalactic society, star seeds and extraterrestrial life, living in oneness with one another, with Mother Earth and with life beyond Earth, the Interstellar Alliance, also known as the Galactic Federation of Light, music, frequency and sound healing, question and answer interviews, shamanism, ancestral wisdom, and the Star Nations, self-sustainative and regenerative living, and much, much more. Go to victoriavives.com/radio, where people can start submitting questions for upcoming shows. Victoria's guest on Tuesday, November 18th is special guest Jessie Ann Nichols-George, sharing about her compassion tour and sharing tools with you for maintaining personal identity, being in crowds, and or being around those that may not share your interest or values. On Saturday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 6 p.m. Pacific, the Pied Piper and Texas Rebel hosting the show Disclosure Now. Disclosure Now is the On the Edge of Our Seats show. It covers all topics of disclosure, from the world's most famous and obscure UFO cases to cryptozoology, conspiracies, and all things that go bump in the night. Pied Piper started his journey in Michigan in 1993 as a preteen, seeing Bigfoot.
All right. Well, you've been tuning in and listening to Disclosure Now tonight with our special guest, Michael Horn. I really appreciated his time. Is the Billy Meier story a fraud? I guess the decision is out on that still. Many bits of information to go over this whole case. I really did not think that it was this in depth, that it had this much substance to it. And it does lend credibility in a sense that one man could have done all of this stuff, especially with one arm. So thank you, skeptics and debunkers, for leaving your skepticism at the door for just this episode. And I would like to apologize to all the callers who may have tried to call in. We have had technical difficulties tonight, if you hadn't noticed. The host was even getting dropped from his own show. Not good, ladies and gentlemen, not good at all. Our Texas Rebel, our co-host, he was dropped as well and couldn't get back on. So we're going to be working on this because we want your interaction. We truly do. We want you to join the conversation and also add to it. I believe that is the true way to get disclosure. So, thank you for tuning in to Disclosure Now. I was your host, the Pied Piper. Texas Rebel was your co-host. I hope you guys enjoyed the show, and I hope you tune in again. Have a nice night, everybody.